Hi everyone, this is Bruce Jens here, and I would like to just run through the kind of course, give you a little bit of an introduction to it, and take a look at the syllabus so that you have an idea of what we are going to be doing this term. So this course is Philosophy 5665, Knowledge, Responsibility, and Society, and it's probably worth thinking about the title of the course, and it gives us a kind of window, I think, into what we're actually going to be doing. For some of you, you'll know this course is one of the core courses in the graduate certificate called Theoretical and Applied Ethics. So it's an ethics course, but I think the title of the course broadens that scope a little bit. The way I read that title is that when we're talking about knowledge, we're talking about epistemological questions. How do we know? What do we know? What is the extent of our knowledge? Where does it stop? What happens when when our knowledge is eroded or challenged or overwhelmed in some way? So all the questions around what some people call our post-truth era politically. So there are a lot of questions around what we know, what we can know, what we ought to know, and and then tied to that are questions around ethics, our ethics towards knowledge. So that's the second world: knowledge, responsibility. So I take responsibility as being the ethical part of this course. What are our ethical obligations towards what we do know, what we ought to know? If we know something, should that require some action on our part? So all those kinds of questions clustered around the previous questions about knowledge. And then the third word in the course title is society, which I take to mean or take to refer to our social organizations, our social institutions. The basic idea that we do not approach this simply as individuals, but as parts of networks, parts of shared kind of projects within a social world. And so this really is, in a certain sense, an attempt to kind of, I guess, push back on the way ethics is sometimes taught, which is as a very individualistic sort of enterprise. How do I decide on a specific thing? How do I look inside myself and decide what the right thing to do is? And for many people, ethics resides very much at the individual level. We are praised or blamed for what we as individuals do. And the questions of knowledge and the questions of social organization are set to the side. They're seen as dealing in different projects or as downstream from those sorts of questions, or just kind of not relevant. And we're making them relevant in this course. That's kind of the whole point of the course. We are trying to think about how is it that these three things are wrapped up with each other. And I think this is a really important kind of way of thinking about ethics within society that often does not get a lot of attention. When we act ethically, we are acting within a social world. We're acting within a set of options that have been presented to us for one reason or another. We're acting within social institutions, within large-scale institutions in some case, like healthcare, or politics, or the law, or some other, the university. There are many different kinds of institutions that we have to act within, and that present us with a set of assumptions. And so, and there's a great deal of knowledge that is either permitted or not permitted, available or not available, for a whole variety of reasons. And so I think all of these things are very much tied up with each other. So let's take a quick look at the syllabus here. And as you can see in it, I've listed some of these questions right off the top. It gives you a set of questions, and there's by no means exhaustive. We'll be turning up many more kinds of questions as we go through this course. There are a couple of texts in the course. The kind of what I think of as the main text is this one right here. So it's Lorraine Code's book, Ecological Thinking. It is at this point from 2006, so you might think, well, is there nothing more recent than that? Frankly, this is a really great book for the kinds of things that we're trying to do in this course. Code, I think, very directly tries to knit together these sorts of things, and this is one of the strengths of feminist philosophy, and she brings that to the table here. In feminist philosophy, we're often concerned with rethinking what we know and how we know, and rethinking the social world in which ethical decisions are taking place. And so Code just does a fabulous job of that, which does not mean that you're required to agree with everything she says. This is a philosophy course. We're going to argue about these things. She might be right, she might be wrong on certain things, but I think she opens the door to a certain kinds of conversation that I think is really important to have. And so that's one of the texts that we have. Another text that we have is right at the end of the course. We're going to be dealing with this one called Post-Truth. And it's really an attempt to think about our current social and political climate, which I think raises all sorts of questions for all three of the central concepts of the course. It raises questions for epistemology, for ethics, and for social organization. And so we're going to try and take some of those on. And then the other thing that we have in this course that we're going to be looking at is the Presidential Commission for the Study of Bioethical Issues. There were a number of project reports. This was a commission that existed during the Obama years, and their work has been archived in Georgetown University. It was taken down as soon as Trump became president. It was the website was scrubbed, but fortunately it was saved. The content was saved, and we're going to be using some of that. And so they really tried to take on some thorny biomedical kinds of questions, and I think it's a great site for thinking about these three concepts. And then I've got what I'm calling Choose Your Own Text. I'm well aware that people in this course come from a wide variety of backgrounds. Probably relatively few people in this course have a lot of philosophy in their background, and that's okay. I'm not assuming that people do. So I'll be trying to kind of give you the philosophical tools needed to think through this stuff as we go. But what it also means is that you're coming to this course with skills and background that I don't have, and probably that others in the course don't have. And that's great. I think that's a real strength of a course like this, and I'm hoping that we can harness some of that as you kind of apply some of the kinds of issues that we're raising in this course to an area that you have expertise in. And so that's what I'm hoping that people will do with this Choose Your Own Text, that, as we get through this course and start thinking about how these three concepts interact with each other and work together, that you will see some of these applications within areas that you are more familiar with, and that you will, start to look for where you might be able to, think through these sorts of things in your own space. And I would love to hear about that. And we're going to have this assignment, and one of the features of this assignment is that you're going to both be handing it in to me for a grade, but you're also going to be putting it up in the discussion area, at least in a kind of abbreviated or shortened form, so that others in the class can see it. Because what I really hope is that we can each learn from each other on this, and your expertise can come to play in the kinds of questions that we're going to be dealing with in this course. This is something where I'm going to be asking you to kind of clear the text with me first, not so that I can kind of control what you're thinking about, but so that I can make sure that you are looking at something that really does leverage the kind of core concepts or core content of our course. So that's the other kind of required text in all of this. And so if we look at course requirements here, you can see I talked a bit about the class format, which is basically a kind of seminar. The course opens up, almost all the modules open up on Wednesday mornings, and they run for 1 week till the next Tuesday evening. The only module where that is not the case is the very first one, which we're in right now. So that opens on the Monday, which is when classes start, and it just runs for a couple of days. And all we're doing with this one is really just an intro to the course. So everything else goes from Wednesday mornings to Tuesday evenings. I am asking people to make 2 posts in each module So there's a discussion and participation area. And so there's going to be discussion prompts in each module. There will also be prompts from people who are doing presentations, which we're going to talk about in a moment. What I'm asking for you to do is make the first post by the Saturday evening of that module. In most my undergrad courses, I make it the Friday evening, but I know a lot of people have full-time day jobs, so we're making it Saturday evening. And for the first post, and then second post, and however many more you want to do by the end of the module, which is the next Tuesday. Why do I do that? Well, I know the tendency of people to try and just kind of do all of this stuff at the last minute, which in this case is Tuesday evenings. And if that's the case, there's not much of a discussion to be had by anyone. You know, everything comes in within the last hour or something like that of the course, and nobody really can, you know, has time to respond to anyone. So this is my attempt to get you to think about the course material a little bit earlier and have something to say about it. And then, make a response to other people's posts. You can do that right away if you want, if other people have already got theirs in or by the end of the module. So, discussion and participation. There will be seminar presentations. Very typical part of a graduate course. Everyone will have to do one of these. And when we look at the kind of schedule for the class itself, you'll see what we're looking at. But right away I'm going to be asking people to give me their numbers 1, 2, and 3 choice of which set of readings that they would like to present on, and that's so I can set up a schedule as early as possible. We have readings as early as the second module, and so I'll want as much coverage across the whole course as possible. And so the reason I ask you to give me your first, second, and third choice is so that I can spread these out, so that we don't have everyone bunching up on one and nobody on 6 weeks worth of content or something like that. That presentation can be in a number of different formats. Most people do PowerPoints, and that's fine. Some people do PowerPoints in which they narrate over them. That's fine too. Some people have done videos. That's fine. I just need you to be able to walk us through the material for the week, and also bring your own reflections to that material. So in other words, it's not just you telling us what it says or what it means, it's also you reacting to it. And by reacting to it, I mean you could react to it based on previous readings from other weeks. You could react to it based on your own experience or your own expertise. You could simply react to the arguments being made. You could say this makes sense, this doesn't make sense, whatever, for the following reasons. What I'm looking for you to do is philosophically engage with the content of the course. And as we build up throughout the course, we're going to have more and more that we can work with. So that's one of the major kind of assignments through this course. Like I say, it's very typical for a graduate course to do something like this. There is, as I mentioned earlier when we were looking at texts, the choose your own text. Well, there's an assignment attached to that. And that assignment will come towards the end of March, where one of the modules or one of the weeks is going to be focused on these texts that you all choose. And typically, I don't know if I'll have time to do it this year, but for the past several years I've done my own version of that as well, and I put my own videos up on that too, so you can see what I have been reading too. Finally, there's a final paper, very typical again for a graduate course. What you can see in this as you look through the requirements right up front here is that the first thing I ask for is a prospectus due 1 month before the final paper deadline, a short descriptive post in the discussion area in the last week of class, in the very last module of the course in the discussion area, and then the final version of the paper. So why do I do it this way? Well, I do it this way in part because I don't want your paper to be just a one-off sort of thing. I find that I get the best work out of people when I give them a number of chances to think through the material. And so if I ask for a prospectus a month before, that means you have to start thinking about it a month before. You have to start assembling your materials and figure out what kind of question you want to ask. If I get you to post something in the last week, you can react to each other's ideas, and that's the intention, to kind of leverage the knowledge and the critical eye of the rest of the class. So let's suppose you want to ask a question about I don't know, knowledge, responsibility, and society within education. And you've got your question, and you sketch out your idea of how you're going to do that. Just a couple of paragraphs worth, doesn't have to be long. And then everyone else gets to say, well, have you thought about this? Or here's a good book. Or, this doesn't make sense. Or, lots of different kinds of reactions, which hopefully will make your final paper stronger. You get all those comments, and then after that, you hand in the final paper. So you get to use all of that input to make it the best kind of work that you can make it. And that, after all, is my ultimate goal for this course. Can I get the best work out of you that is possible? So that's what we're going to be doing. You can see after that we have a schedule, and what you're going to see there is that in the beginning of that schedule, the first few weeks, we've got a lot of separate readings. Try and take you through some of the kinds of core readings throughout the history of philosophy. Most of this is Western philosophy, but every one of these weeks has something outside of Western philosophy as well, because I think it's a real danger to think that the West is the only place where good questions have been asked or good ideas have emerged. And so each of those weeks is going to have something from someone else. My own expertise is in African philosophy, and so some of this is a couple of these weeks are Africa related, but we could have chosen any number of other non-Western traditions. From there we go into the Lorraine Code Book, and we spend 3 weeks on that. From there we spend 3 weeks on the 3 of the case studies from the Bioethics Commission. Then after that we have the Your Choice of Course text, which we've talked about, and then finally the McIntyre reading of Post-Truth, and then at the very end April 20th, which is actually a short module because the last day of classes is the Monday, that I believe 25th, so it's slightly shorter, and that's the module in which you'll present your kind of précis of your paper and get response from everyone else. So that's the kind of path for the course. If we continue down through the syllabus here, what you'll see is what I call the fine but important print. And so this is by far the longest part of the syllabus because it reads a bit like a legal document, but I would encourage you to read it because there's going to be some useful stuff in there for you. Some of this is really more relevant to face-to-face courses, and so for example, electronic submission of papers, well, that becomes an issue in face-to-face courses, really not an issue at all in web courses. But I would suggest reading that anyway. I've occasionally had people sending me non-standard file formats or non-standard, Word, processors or something like that. So there is a limit on the kinds of formats that I'm willing to take. There's a section on writing help. There's a section on attendance and absences from class and things like that. And so please read that. Classroom behavior, obviously in a physical classroom that means something different from an online course, but there can be issues in discussion areas at times as well. So please read that also. Section on flexibility and late papers and so forth, digital tools. This is all pretty self-explanatory. Communicating with students, incompletes, academic integrity, short version, don't plagiarize. Course accessibility, financial aid, statement on online students, campus safety. This may or may not apply to any of you if you're not on campus at all. There may be the only one, well, a couple more. Right at the end here, there's a statement on COVID protocols, and please read that as well. That's really just taken from the university statement. And then I have a section on controversial content. Many of my classes have what at least some might consider controversial content. We deal in very current ideas quite often. Some of those are hot button issues within society. And so we really, I really do try and be sensitive to people's experiences and to people's, especially the trauma that some have experienced in various cases. But I don't give things like trigger warnings. I don't tell people, what they should be worried about or afraid of, depending on their experience. My goal really is to try and help people develop the mental and emotional and academic skills to think through a wide range of things. And that's, in some areas, going to be more difficult for some than for others. I mean, I teach African philosophy, as I said, and when we start talking about racism, we start talking about the brutalities that have been part of the lives of blacks around the world for centuries, and up to this day, including this day. These can be some really touchy and sensitive issues, and yet these need to be talked about. This is the real world. And so, this is just a warning that there will be controversial content. I will be willing to work with people on how to sensitively deal with those sorts of things, but I don't censor the kinds of things that we deal with in this course, because, we need to deal with the world as it is. So that is the syllabus. Let me just go back up to the top here. There we go. And I'm always happy to talk about any of this. If anyone has questions for it, the best way to reach me is through web courses. I'm on pretty much all the time. If you would rather reach me through my UCF email, that's fine too. That's bruce.jans@ucf.edu. I love teaching this course. I've taught it for a while now, and I think approaching ethics in these terms this way is just really a useful and important way to think about where we are in the world and how we can have a place in it using philosophical tools that we develop here. So thank you so much, and I look forward to our discussions in class.